South African households are over R1 trillion poorer than last year. Now that's according to the latest Momentum-Unisa Household Wealth Index report. A 10% drop in the value of assets like pension funds, insurance and investments are behind the decline. Let's get more information from co-author of the report, Momentum's Johann van Tonder. Mr. van Tonder, good morning and thank you very much for your time. Before we dissect the results, perhaps just for the benefit of those who might not know, can you just take us through the method of calculating in this particular report when we're looking at one's wealth?
Good morning. Yeah, thanks. The second quarter was indeed not a very good time for South African households. And the way we calculate household wealth is basically we add up all their assets and then subtract all outstanding debts. And then you would arrive at household wealth. So we obtain the numbers. It's not a survey. We get the numbers from various sources such as the Reserve Bank and the JSE, as well as Stats SA, and also a few house price indices and so on. So it's actual numbers that we use to calculate household wealth. And wealth should not be then confused with income.
Yes.
Because we use income in order to build wealth. I mean, that's the end goal of all households.
So essentially, we're taking the value of your assets and subtracting the value of your debt in this instance. That's how we would be calculating the wealth. Am I correct?
Correct.
And then talk to us about what it's attributed to, this particular drop. It seems there's been a drop in pension funds. Just talk us through this.
Yeah, basically what happened in the second quarter, as already said, it was a really bad economic quarter for South Africans, because what we've seen, it sort of started off with the floods, and then everything just continued. We had the war, we still have the war between Russia and Ukraine, which actually causing increases in oil prices, which then contributed to large increases in our fuel price as well as food prices. So inflation went up, and then central banks all over the world started increasing interest rates in a very aggressive way in order to try and pull demand back. And those increases in interest rates was actually, it was the main cause for the drop in household wealth. Because high interest rates, what it did, it affected share prices, and share stock indices all over the world basically started to decline. And we know our pension funds are invested in shares, so it's unit trusts and all kinds of other investments. So that's the main cause for the drop in household wealth. Is basically interest rates going up, affecting share prices, and then affecting the value of our investments as well as pension funds.
What I'm getting from you, correct me if I'm wrong, is that essentially recession fears in major economies is what really led to this, or perhaps worries around inflation.
100% correct. The US already in a technical recession with 2 quarters of negative growth, and the Federal Reserve has stated that they're going to be very aggressive in trying to bring inflation down. I mean, their inflation is higher than ours. It's now around about 8%, and also in the UK it's more than 10%. And now the central banks basically all over the world is becoming even more aggressive. And that actually started the fears of a world recession very soon. We don't know actually whether it is going to happen, but those fears were more than enough to cause a large drops in our share prices basically all over the world.
Now, as per your report, it shows that there's been a significant increase in debt, be it your mortgages, your vehicles and secured loans. Just talk us through this part.
Yeah, what we've seen is that the pace at which households are incurring debt actually slowed. in the second quarter compared to the first quarter, in reaction also to the higher interest rates, but also because disposable incomes coming under pressure because of higher prices or inflation. So it was more the more affluent part of households that could afford new mortgages. But then what we've seen in the other debt component, in other words, your personal loans and also credit cards, overdrafts, and all accounts in arrears, such as your municipal bills and all the other types of accounts in arrears, that also increased by a similar amount than the mortgages. So it shows that households are under pressure, even though the increase doesn't seem that large, and even though the pace of debt or the uptake of debt slowed. It shows that households are actually right now they're feeling the pressures of higher interest rates and a lack of income, or not a lack, slower growth in disposable income and higher inflation. So yeah, it's tough.
But do you think these tough times will actually last, or your predictions are for the next quarter, perhaps we could see some sort of an upward trajectory?
Yeah, there's always a bright side. So let's look at the bright side. What we've seen in the first half of the third quarter is that we've clawed back some of the losses. Almost half of the 1.2 trillion been clawed back in the first, say, month and a half of the third quarter. So a little bit of good news, and that's because of the a partial recovery in share prices that we've seen, and also the slower growth in debt. And then also we should see the peak of the increase in inflation in the third quarter, whereafter it should go down and reduce the pressures of disposable income of households, which would then enable them again to use such income to build and accumulate wealth.
Mr. van Tonder, thank you very much for your time and insights. That's Momentum's Johann van Tonder. More